The day I learned I was pregnant was also the day my boyfriend Daniel married his first love, Olivia. It was a small ceremony held in the hospital courtyard where she was being treated. He later tried to explain it away, saying it was her final wish before she passed away, her last desire to be his bride. His explanation left me reeling, wondering what my own place was supposed to be in his life now. In that moment, the harsh reality struck me. The 10 years I had dedicated to him, supporting him through thick and thin, seemed insignificant compared to the emotional hold Olivia still had over him. I had arrived at the hospital intending to share my news, only to stumble upon the ceremony already in progress. I watched, hidden partially by a tree, as Daniel placed a wedding ring on Olivia's finger. The small group of attendees applauded warmly. When he lifted her veil, I saw her clearly for the first time. Olivia, dressed in white, was undeniably beautiful, making me feel instantly inadequate. The guests encouraged them to kiss, and Olivia tilted her face up expectantly. Daniel hesitated for a long second before planting a gentle kiss on her cheek. It was then that his eyes found mine, standing frozen under the tree. The man who had promised me forever, who had spoken of our own future wedding, was now committing himself to someone else. A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the cool breeze. My presence didn't go unnoticed for long. The ceremony paused awkwardly as whispers spread through the guests. Who is she? What's she doing here? Their disapproving glances made me feel like an intruder, the villain spoiling a poignant love story. Olivia saw me too, her perfect features marred by a slight frown. Daniel looked startled, let go of Olivia's hand, and started towards me, calling my name. Sarah, wait! But Olivia quickly grasped his arm, tears forming in her eyes as she looked at me with an expression I read as pity. Daniel, she murmured, a wedding needs a groom. Daniel, usually so decisive, stopped in his tracks. He looked from me to her, his body language clearly leaning towards Olivia. I knew then that waiting for him to choose would be pointless and deeply humiliating. He wasn't going to choose me. Without a word, I turned and walked away. He called my name again. Sarah! Taking a few steps, but then someone cried out Olivia's name in distress behind him. There was a brief commotion, but he didn't follow me. That night, sleep was impossible. Daniel never came home. The last message I'd sent him remained unread. Daniel, when you get back, I have a surprise for you. The irony was sickening. While I was planning my surprise, he had delivered his own devastating one. On the very day I discovered I was carrying his child, the man I loved had married another woman. I'd believed his story about being away on an urgent business trip, too busy to even respond to texts. The truth was far crueler. He was busy getting married. My anticipation, my carefully planned surprise, my future hopes, everything turned into a bitter joke. The crumpled positive pregnancy test in my hand suddenly felt utterly meaningless. My relationship with Daniel had begun years ago, shortly after his first breakup with Olivia. He had been at a professional and personal low point, and I had entered his life by chance, offering comfort and steady support. I stood by him for 7 years as he rebuilt everything. When he finally said he wanted to marry me, I initially wondered if it stemmed from gratitude or guilt. But he'd assured me otherwise, saying, I don't know exactly when it happened, Sarah, but my focus shifted to you and I haven't been able to look away since. Those words had filled me with a quiet joy, because secretly, I had been drawn to him long before we were together. It felt like my unspoken hopes were finally being realized, that we had truly moved past his history with Olivia. Her reappearance shattered that illusion. It forced me to admit I'd likely been fooling myself. He had never really let her go. As dusk settled that evening after the hospital wedding, I resolved to leave him for good. I had just finished packing my suitcase when Daniel returned to our apartment, looking drained. Sarah, he began, that wedding, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. I just looked at him, silent. Olivia has ALS, he explained, his voice heavy. Her last wish was to be a bride. He seemed anguished, but I couldn't tell if it was from his perception of my lack of understanding or from the reality of Olivia's condition. Likely the latter. My feelings rarely seemed to cause him distress. When I went to see her today, he continued, his brow furrowed. She was already in the dress. She asked me to stay with her, through what's coming. Sarah, I couldn't refuse. She's dying. Had he even considered refusing? Watching him during the ceremony, his smile as he looked at Olivia had seemed entirely genuine. He had married the girl he loved in his youth, fulfilling a dream he likely never abandoned. When did she even come back? I asked numbly. Was it that day we were looking at engagement rings? Hindsight brought clarity. I recalled that day vividly. He'd received a phone call that visibly rattled his usual calm demeanor. He, who had become so composed as his career flourished, suddenly seemed distracted, a strange mix of sadness and urgency in his eyes that I couldn't place. He'd mumbled something about an urgent business problem. I hadn't questioned it. Soon after, he left for a supposed multi-day business trip. Upon his return, he'd been distant, lost in thought. I had tried my best to cheer him up, assuming work stress was weighing him down, wanting to share his burden. Now I understood his preoccupation wasn't about business. It was about Olivia. Were you with her during that trip? I asked directly. He didn't answer, his silence confirming my suspicion. He'd always been straightforward with me, perhaps because he never felt the need to lie. But Olivia warranted an exception. Suddenly, the man before me felt unfamiliar, even though his features were the same. A bitter chuckle escaped me. Daniel, I sighed, just forget it. He remained standing in my path, silent but resolute, lips pressed tight. I saw his throat move as if he wanted to speak, but no words came. I gripped my suitcase handle, ready to push past him. He caught my wrist, his voice hoarse. Sarah, don't leave. I wrenched my arm free. I needed to go to the hospital for my own reasons, now a checkup, and then scheduling the procedure. As I exited my apartment building, I ran straight into Olivia. She offered a polite smile. Hello, I'm Olivia. A former ballet dancer, she possessed an undeniable grace and beauty that made me feel instantly plain beside her. I remembered the stories. How she'd left Daniel years ago when his career stumbled, choosing her studies abroad over him. Perhaps the old adage was true. People often want what they can't have. Maybe that's why Daniel remained fixated on her. And why someone like me, always available, was never truly cherished. Daniel mentioned you're his fiancé, Olivia stated, tilting her chin slightly, a knowing glint in her eye. It felt like a deliberate jab. Fiancé? The title was meaningless now. He'd just married her. To Olivia, I was clearly an inconvenience. Regarding the wedding, she went on, I assume Daniel explained? I had no desire to talk to her. The bitterness intensified. He had made his choice. I wouldn't fight a dying woman for him. That wasn't who I was. She wants him. She can have him, I thought, turning to walk away. Olivia apparently wasn't finished and hurried after me, only to stumble and fall. At that exact moment, Daniel appeared. Seeing Olivia on the ground, he rushed to her side, helping her up with extreme gentleness as if she might break. When he looked up at me, his eyes held a clear note of reproach. Sarah, Olivia is sick, he stated, as if that excused everything, marrying her without a word to me, staying with her all night while I was left in agonizing uncertainty, then casually asking me not to leave the next day. My importance in his life, or lack thereof, was painfully clear. I didn't do anything, I retorted sharply, emphasizing the next words with deliberate scorn. Your wife fell. The mockery in my tone made him frown deeply. He wasn't used to such sharpness from me. For years, I had been consistently accommodating, making myself small to fit into his life. Olivia adopted an apologetic expression, though I detected a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. I tripped. Sarah didn't push me, she told Daniel. You know how my muscles sometimes betray me, Daniel. It dawned on me then that Olivia didn't need petty tricks. Simple vulnerability was her most potent weapon. Daniel's unresolved feelings for her, amplified by her illness, made him incapable of holding her past actions against her. Life and death situations tended to overshadow old grievances. Daniel looked momentarily taken aback by her explanation. He glanced at me again, seemingly wanting to say something but hesitating. Olivia then took an orange from Daniel's hand, one he had evidently peeled for her. "You two probably have things to discuss," she said lightly. "I'll head back up. Talk as long as you need." The peeled orange registered with a jolt. I loved oranges. Daniel hated them. I'd learned this the hard way early on when I innocently offered him orange cake at a dinner with his friends. He'd frozen, his friends had stared, and one had eventually explained Daniel's intense aversion to anything orange-flavored, forcing me into an awkward penalty drink. Much later, Daniel had tearfully explained the reason. Oranges were linked to the traumatic memory of his mother's suicide when he was a child. She had given him oranges to eat while waiting for her return, a return that never happened. He later learned she didn't even like oranges much. They were just cheap and colorful during a time of illness and poverty. Since learning that painful story, I had consciously avoided oranges around him, even hiding away an orange-scented perfume. Seeing him now, holding a peeled orange for Olivia, suggested one of two things. Either he had finally overcome the trauma associated with them, or Olivia was the exception for whom even his deepest pain could be set aside. My own careful consideration of his feelings over the years clearly hadn't earned me the same consideration. He knew Olivia liked oranges. He barely knew my preferences. His painful past was irrelevant when it came to her. Daniel turned back to Olivia with concern. "Should I get a nurse?" His solicitude was obvious. Olivia shrugged with a faint smile. "No, I'm fine, Daniel. You two talk." He turned back to me. "Sarah, where did you move to?" Before I could form a reply, a noise made us both look. Olivia, having taken only a few steps, had stumbled again. Daniel instantly forgot our conversation and rushed to her side. I watched his anxious face as he checked a scrape on her arm. "You shouldn't have come down alone," he murmured gently, his tone a strange mix of scolding and tenderness. "Does it hurt? Can you walk?" Olivia shook her head mutely. Without another word, Daniel lifted her into his arms and carried her away. As they disappeared, Olivia looked back over his shoulder directly at me, a radiant, smug smile spreading across her face. The message was clear: I won. Her simple act of frailty was devastatingly effective. Nausea churned in my stomach. I fled to the nearest restroom and was violently ill. It was much later when a message arrived from Daniel. "Sarah, why are you at the hospital? Are you sick?" The question felt absurdly late. He hadn't seemed concerned about my presence at his wedding the previous day. Shaking my head with a humorless laugh, I blocked his number and all his social media profiles. Nevertheless, Daniel eventually learned about the pregnancy. My best friend Chloe confessed apologetically that her husband, Mark Daniel's childhood friend, had told him, thinking he was helping. Chloe was furious with Mark, but the damage was done. It was ironic. Chloe and Mark were newlyweds themselves, their own union something Daniel and I had encouraged. Now, after 7 years, my relationship with Daniel was ending in ruins, while theirs was just beginning. Daniel showed up at the hospital clinic where I had my appointment, arriving breathless and panicked. Relief flooded his face when he saw me still in the waiting area. He pulled me into a hug, holding on tightly. "Sarah, I was wrong," he whispered urgently. "Please, don't be impulsive. Can we just talk?" The faint smell of smoke clung to him, a rare indulgence for him, usually reserved for moments of intense stress, likely brought on by his frantic search for treatments for Olivia. But beneath the smoke was the stronger, cloying scent of jasmine. I recognized it instantly from my brief encounter with Olivia earlier, and it triggered a painful memory. Years ago, during a difficult period after his father's death and business troubles, Daniel had disappeared for days, claiming he needed space. He returned smelling faintly of jasmine. Only now did I connect it to Olivia. She must have been his solace even then. The bitter twist? When I'd asked about the scent back then, he'd presented me with a bottle of jasmine perfume, saying he'd thought of me. I'd been so touched, believing it proof of his affection. Our relationship had deepened then. He'd seemed closer. Now, smelling that same scent on him, the truth hit me like a physical blow. He hadn't been drawn to me, but to the scent that reminded him of her. I had unknowingly been her substitute. Revulsion and anger surged through me. I pushed him away forcefully and slapped him hard across the face. He stood stunned, hand to his cheek, bewildered. Chloe rushed to my side. "Sarah, are you okay?" Another wave of nausea overwhelmed me, and I fled back to the restroom, retching until I felt faint. Chloe followed, offering water and rubbing my back. "This is unbearable," she murmured. Daniel appeared in the doorway, the red imprint of my hand stark against his pale skin, pity in his eyes. I glared at him. "Do you realize how repulsive you are to me?" I spat out. "That perfume? You chose it deliberately because it smelled like her, didn't you?" His face went white. He knew exactly what I meant. "Sarah, let me explain," he pleaded. I didn't understand then. I thought the scent was comforting. Later, I realized you were the comfort. "Sarah, I do want to marry you." I scoffed. "Fine, choose. Either Olivia is completely gone from our lives or you stay away from me forever." He hesitated. Chloe immediately challenged him. "What's to hesitate about? Choose Sarah. 7 years, Daniel." But he just muttered, "But she's dying, Sarah, she's dying." He appealed to me again. She was a dancer. ALS. Can you imagine? His justification felt grotesque, minimizing my pain. "Daniel, you're my partner," I cried out. "Is pity enough reason to marry her? To keep leaving me for her? Can't you distinguish pity from love?" He stubbornly clung to her illness as an excuse for his unresolved feelings. He remained silent, fists clenched, knuckles white. The tense standoff was broken by Daniel's ringing phone. A frantic voice yelled through the speaker, audible even from where I stood. "Get here now! Olivia's trying to kill herself!" Panic seized Daniel's features. At the same instant, a nurse called my name for the procedure. The timing felt like a cruel confirmation of his priorities. He had already chosen. A bleak laugh escaped me. "Go," I said tonelessly. "Just hope she doesn't succeed. You'd probably resent me forever." His eyes pleaded with me. "Sarah, promise me you'll wait. Wait until I get back. I'm the father. We need to talk about this." I forced a tight smile, digging my nails into my palms. 7 years down the drain. His phone shrilled again. "Daniel, have you no conscience?" Chloe yelled at him. The fear on his face was real. He truly believed Olivia might harm herself. "She's playing you," Chloe insisted. But I knew he wasn't blind. He was choosing to indulge her fear, terrified of the small chance her threat was genuine. "Sarah, wait for me," he begged one last time. I said nothing. He turned desperately to Chloe. "Please, watch her. Don't let her go in." Chloe retorted, "Watch her yourself." I held up a hand, stopping him. Then, I calmly unscrewed the cap of the water bottle Chloe had given me and emptied the remaining contents over his head. "Daniel," I stated clearly, "we are done. Don't ever look for me again." Water streamed down his face, stinging his eyes red. He stared at me, blankly murmuring, "I'm sorry," before turning and sprinting away towards Olivia. Watching him run, I felt utterly defeated. "That absolute coward!" Chloe fumed beside me. Then, her anger shifting to concern, she asked, "Sarah, you okay?" "Fine," I whispered. In truth, I hadn't really expected him to choose me, and even if he had, the damage was too profound. Our relationship was shattered beyond repair. Before heading into the operating room, I unblocked his number briefly to send a final message. "I'm sure you'll find others willing to have children with you, but there's only one, Olivia." I wanted him to carry the weight of this loss, to remember the future he chose to discard, the future he once seemed eager for. That's how you extinguish a heart. The procedure was quick. When I came around, Chloe and Mark were both there. I remembered the rings. "Mark," I managed to say, "in my purse. 2 ring boxes. Please return them to Daniel." Picking them out felt like a distant, meaningless memory now. He hadn't truly been present then, his mind clearly elsewhere. Mark nodded and slipped out. Chloe sat with me. "He doesn't deserve you, Sarah." I knew she felt partly responsible for Daniel finding out, having hoped it might force a resolution. She hadn't initially understood the full depth of his betrayal, the wedding, the repeated abandonments. But Mark then sent her a video, which she watched openly beside me. It showed Daniel embracing a weeping Olivia. She sobbed about hating the hospital, wanting to see the world, wanting to dance again. Daniel held her, murmuring, "Okay, okay," tears tracing paths down his own cheeks. They looked like a pair torn apart by cruel fate. The sight turned my stomach. Chloe showed me deliberately. She knew I needed to see the raw reality to finally sever the emotional ties. After being discharged, Chloe and Mark drove me to the temporary apartment I'd rented. As we pulled up, Daniel appeared, holding the returned ring boxes, looking lost. "Sarah," he asked, his voice hollow, "did you... the baby?" Chloe cut him off. "Don't you dare act like the victim, Daniel." I asked quietly, "How's Olivia? Resting, I assume, since you're here?" His silence confirmed it. A faint, weary smile touched my lips. "If you're so devoted, go be with her. Just leave me alone." His blank expression finally cracked, revealing a maelstrom of pain, guilt, and sorrow beneath. His eyes were bloodshot. I said nothing more. The ache in my lower abdomen was a constant, sharp reminder. Chloe, fiercely protective, unloaded on him. "Figure yourself out, Daniel. Sarah gave you 7 years. Olivia left you and you still chased her. Have some dignity." Daniel offered no defense. Chloe tried to close the car door, but he blocked it. "Sarah, she'll be out of our lives," he promised desperately. Chloe scoffed. "Didn't you just promise her the world? Lying to both ends now? You can't have everything, Daniel." She tried again to close the door. Mark got out. "Daniel, go home, man. What you did, just go." Daniel ignored him, locking eyes with me. He opened a ring box, holding out the engagement ring. "We can go back, Sarah, get married, have other children." Mark sighed and physically pried Daniel's shaking fingers off the doorframe. Daniel's eyes pleaded with me. Mark got back in, and we drove off. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Daniel stood motionless, watching us disappear. He knew the cost when he chose Olivia. This performance of anguish felt empty. "What a show," Chloe muttered, following my gaze. In the following weeks, I focused on healing in my quiet rental. Chloe visited frequently. "Daniel keeps bugging Mark for your address," she reported, annoyed. I just smiled faintly, eating the orange pudding she'd brought, the fruit no longer off limits. Then, Olivia called, wanting to meet. Intrigued, I agreed. At the cafe, she looked fragile but composed. "You took care of Daniel for years," she began. "But do you realize how pathetic that makes you look now? Like a thief proud of stolen goods?" Before I could react, she continued coolly. "Love isn't fair, Sarah. I'm dying." So I fought for him back. "If you must blame someone, blame yourself for failing to hold his heart after all this time." She smiled then, a victor's smile, convinced her death would eternally bind Daniel to her memory. I found her confidence almost amusing. "When you're gone, Olivia, what guarantee do you have?" I countered quietly. "The dead have power, yes. But can you ensure he won't find someone else who reminds him of you eventually?" Her smile wavered. I pressed on. "Who will haunt him more? A memory? Or the woman he lost who is still living, breathing, and out of reach? You know his weaknesses, Olivia. Is it devotion he feels or just attachment to a familiar ghost?" She remained silent, lips tight. "Perhaps," I concluded, rising to leave, "a beautiful death in his arms is your best bet for being remembered fondly." She seemed like a fading rose, grasping for validation before wilting entirely. It was strangely sad. Their tragic love story played out its final act without my involvement. I focused on myself, took some time off, then accepted a position at a new company, rebuilding the career I had paused for Daniel. Looking back, those years felt like a detour, a waste of precious time. Life settled into a new normal. Months later, Chloe brought over her formal wedding invitations, the celebration finally scheduled for winter. "Daniel's going to be there," she warned gently. "Mark asked him to be best man ages ago. Is that okay? I can tell Mark no." But their friendship predated me. It wasn't fair to disrupt their day. "It's fine, Chloe," I assured her. "Have the wedding you deserve." The wedding day arrived. Daniel, as best man, looked handsome in his suit, stirring an unexpected memory of my first glimpse of him years ago, a confident young man whose chance remark about a rainbow had inexplicably lifted my spirits during a moment of deep despair. It was 3 years after that brief encounter that our paths crossed again, leading to the 7 years of entanglement. The man at the wedding, however, looked weary, a stark contrast to the vibrant figure from my memory. Our eyes met across the room. Despite the joyous atmosphere, he stood motionless, his gaze intense. I turned away, busying myself with Chloe's veil. Later, amidst the crowd, a child bumped into me, and unsteady in heels, I stumbled. Daniel caught my arm. The brief contact, the lingering scent of smoke and jasmine, brought back a wave of nausea. I pulled away sharply. "Don't touch me." He recoiled, looking hurt. "Be careful, Sarah," he said softly, his tone disturbingly gentle. I ignored him. At the reception, Olivia was present, seated in her wheelchair, looking pale but composed. She called Daniel's name and he went to her, albeit with a subtle frown. Chloe muttered darkly about thieves fearing thieves. During the ceremony, as I watched Chloe and Mark exchange vows, tears welled up. Daniel moved beside me, offering a tissue. I refused it, noticing the wedding ring still on his finger. It felt like a mockery. Olivia wheeled closer. "Daniel, we never exchanged rings," she reminded him pointedly. He ignored her, looking at me instead, searching for a reaction I wouldn't give. My focus was on the happy couple. "That should have been us too," Daniel murmured, loud enough for Olivia and me to hear. I recalled Chloe's old joke about a double wedding. The memory, voiced now by him, was sickening. I stepped away. Then, Chloe's bouquet landed squarely in Olivia's lap. Chloe took the mic, loudly questioning why the bouquet went to someone already married, or rather, someone who stole someone else's fiancé for a sham wedding. Whispers filled the room. Olivia flushed crimson, looked desperately at Daniel, who offered no support and fled the hall. Surprisingly, Daniel didn't follow. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I never legally married her. I regretted it." Chloe scoffed. "Aren't you going after her? What if she tries something?" Daniel gave me a long look, then walked away. Later, I heard Olivia had disappeared. Chloe speculated it was a ploy for attention. I suspected fear was the motivator. Fear of Daniel witnessing her decline. She likely wanted to be remembered beautifully, perhaps believing guilt would bind him longer than shared suffering. My words in the cafe might have resonated. Eventually, Daniel found her. Her illness had progressed rapidly. He felt immense guilt, tried to travel with her, but his struggling business demanded his presence. Olivia died that winter. She had it rough, Chloe conceded with a sigh. If she hadn't been so manipulative, I'd feel sorry for her. I felt a pang of empathy too. Soon after, Daniel's company faced a major crisis due to his poor decisions. "Good thing I got out when I did," I remarked to Chloe, reviewing work documents. Finally, inevitably, Daniel appeared at my door. I knew he'd known my address. I'd seen him standing outside late one night weeks before, looking desolate amidst a pile of cigarette butts. Now, he looked thinner, tired despite his neat clothes and still wearing that ring. "Sarah, can I come in?" "Say what you need to say here," I replied, blocking the entrance. "Sarah, I miss you," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "When Olivia died, it wasn't as bad as I expected, but every day without you, I'm miserable. I can't live without you, Sarah." His words felt empty, naive. "So," I countered coolly, "the backup plan gets remembered now that the first choice is gone?" Perhaps some sincerity was there, but I suspected he saw me as a means to salvage his failing life. "Sarah, don't be like this," he pleaded. "This isn't you." He was right. The old me was gone, unvalued by him. "You can't just forget 7 years," he insisted. "I can move on," I stated calmly. "Unlike some." He muttered, "We never legally married." I scoffed. Trying to minimize her importance now to inflate mine? It's pathetic, Daniel. I started to close the door. "Sorry, my boyfriend is waiting." He looked shocked. "Boyfriend? I don't believe you." "Look downstairs," I said, gesturing towards the window. "Nice sports car? That's him." Taller, younger, better looking? He actually went to look, his face turning ashen. I closed the door just as my phone rang. It was the new intern from work asking about his employment status. Life moved on,